Hello dear subscribers and guests of our channel. Today, I want to share with you a life story narrated by an author. I wish you a pleasant time watching our video. The young couple was about to go to bed when suddenly, it started to thunder and lightning flashed. At that exact moment, the rain started beating against the windows, and the sound of the stallion could be heard. Pegasus was scared. Alice was worried and put on her cloak. "He's not a child," grumbled Sergio. "Nothing will happen to him." "And if he breaks something," the young woman said and ran for the exit. "The only thing that could break is our marriage," the man whispered seriously. He stood still for a while, unable to decide what to do. Should he look for his wife? It was night, anything could happen. Or should he go to bed? It was night, he should wake up early for work. He decided on the second option. After all, they were in a somewhat safe area, and nothing would happen to his wife or the stallion. Sergio hated hooves. This one-year-old stallion had become the most important thing for his wife. She took care of him like he was a child. The man was already regretting having given in to his wife's appeals and bought an innocent horse for her. I would have preferred to buy a crocodile, so Alice would have spent less time with him, he thought. He had recently started to think about a crocodile. He wouldn't have a pet for no reason, but who knew what would happen to that horse? At first, he thought the problem would be controlling the space in the yard to make room for him, but the real problem ended up being the other one. His wife spent all her time with Pegasus. Sometimes Sergio hated himself for having made the hasty decision to buy the stallion. All he was concerned about was what his colleagues would say. It seemed peaceful to share the news about his pet during lunchtime, as if it were something unimportant, something ordinary. He still boasted to his friends, not wanting to admit that he was tired of the horse and the unhappy competition with it. Sergio suggested selling Pegasus, but Alice didn't want to separate from her new friend. "He's a member of the family, and you don't betray family. Besides, we're responsible for the animals we domesticate." He had to listen to his wife's lectures on more than one occasion. Sergio no longer offered to attract and sell the new member of his family, he just mentally cursed the day they brought an animal home and were happy. His wife, on the other hand, was obsessed with horses, and there was nothing he could do to appease this passion. Meanwhile, Sergio was obsessed with his wife. He couldn't stand it anymore. He hoped it would pass, that she would calm down, that she would offer to get rid of that stallion. Sorry, hoofs. Now that's the only way to call him a stallion. It seems so distant, without love, Alice said. You wouldn't just call your children kids, would you? She was talking about children. They had recently found out that they would have a new family member. Sergio wanted to have children. His wife was 30, and he was 35. Then, the sooner the better, the later there will be less energy, the children are of their own blood, wouldn't be jealous of children, but a horse with those thoughts twisted the man and he fell asleep. His wife had not arrived. Sergio dreamed of the sea and the beach, the two were relaxed enjoying the rays of the sun, but in reality, it was a cold and rainy shine, and he wanted warmth. Suddenly the sky turned gray, thunder and lightning struck, the horse cried out in pain. Sergio woke up, jumped out of bed, looked around, it was calm, there was a storm outside the window, and Alice had still not appeared. He looked at the clock and found out that he had slept for half an hour. Irritated, he went out to look for his wife. Spending the whole night with the stallion was the last straw, especially because Alice had a husband who also needed attention. Alice stood by Pegasus and calmed him down. God, woman, it's just a storm. Soon you'll put the poor devil inside the house and in bed with us, Sergio said with disgust. It's his first storm. Of course, like his first spring, and before that, he had his first winter, and every day he has something that comes first for him. It never ends or doesn't end until you come to live with him because he needs more attention than I do, the wife defended the stallion. The husband shrugged his shoulders, it's just Gomez. Alicia smiled, how can I be jealous? Sergio was angry in his thoughts. The woman spent more time with the horse than with him, even at night. Maybe I'm afraid of storms too, I just don't make as much noise as he does, Sergio defended himself. Alice laughed and hugged her husband. Finally, they went to sleep. He assured his wife that Pegasus was safe, just to win her attention, almost every day. Luckily, the stallion couldn't speak, otherwise, he would do better than Sergio. What saved the man was his sense of humor. Alice always listened to her wife's enthusiastic stories about how great it was to have Pegasus, and at work, she boasted to everyone about how great it was to have a horse at home, with no further intentions. You might as well have horses, she told them, so that only he wouldn't suffer. Unfortunately, no one else was enthusiastic about a horse. Everyone thought that having a horse came with too many obligations. Going for a ride is easy, but there was no place to keep it at home, although Sergio convinced his friends that a horse is not an elephant and doesn't take up much space. Meanwhile, Alice dreamed of opening a riding school to train children and adults. She was thinking about this idea all the time she was pregnant, although it seemed like madness to Sergio. He blamed it on the hormones that all pregnant women have, some pineapples at night and strawberries in winter, and his beloved Alice wants to raise a horse. A woman in her right mind wouldn't make plans like that, right? How are you going to manage a whole school? One stallion won't be enough. You need another place, Sergio said. Just thinking about more than one horse made him feel bad. The man was explaining to his wife how long it would take her to comb all the horses, and how big the space had to be for them. You need a big stable, but the field that the horses need to run, so many worries, her husband told her. One day, Alice approached Sergio with some papers, and he responded by revealing that he had already developed an entire plan for a horse riding school. He had found an ideal location, an old horse riding facility that required cleaning and renovation, and he had even assembled a staff. However, they needed different conditions, and he had devised a business plan with a relatively small investment, as he didn't want to invest in something too significant. Alice smiled innocently and presented a sum of money she needed for her project. Although it would take a few years, it was a promising investment. Sergio promised to think about it, as horse riding was becoming fashionable. Although he preferred investing in something safer and more tranquil, he refrained from expressing his opinion during Alice's pregnancy. He hoped that after the baby was born, Alice would forget about her idea of setting up the equestrian school. He was irritated that Alice spent so much time at the Pegasus stable, taking care of the horse, brushing him, and talking to him as if he were a human child. Then he had an epiphany. He realized that conversing with Pegasus calmed him down and made him feel better. He believed he didn't need a psychologist, he could talk to the horse instead. One day, Alice excitedly informed Sergio that the equestrian school plan would be even more worthwhile. She had read that horses are a substitute for visiting a psychologist, particularly for individuals with developmental or mental health problems. Horses help us communicate with them, and even autistic people undergo this type of therapy. Horses are also used in rehabilitation after stroke, trauma, and many other conditions. Alice explained that this was equine therapy and that they could offer it in addition to the school. She believed that helping people was fantastic, and there were few such centers in the country, which made it even more promising for business. Sergio didn't think that horses could help with mental health problems and believed that he would need a more serious clinic. However, he tolerated Alice's idea because she was pregnant. His friends assured him that their wives had done worse things, and he felt fortunate in that aspect. He reasoned that if Alice could enjoy a good stallion, so be it, as it was beneficial for her, especially in the final stages of pregnancy. Even the doctor confirmed this. After all, what can you do for someone you love? Sergio couldn't stop praising his stallion. Even in front of his friends, he was ashamed to admit that an animal was drawing attention to his family. Everyone around him listened to his enthusiastic comments and envied the man. The foaling hour was approaching. On that day, Sergio had a difficult contract to close at work, and he almost couldn't seal the deal. Everything was finalized at the last moment, and they had to adjust a lot of things with the partners. The whole time, they didn't like the terms and almost lost a good client. Many nerves were spent on this. Then, exhausted, Sergio went back home. He didn't even feel like eating, only lying in his wife's arms. Then, he crashed his car and had to call a tow truck. While waiting, it started raining heavily, and the crane operator was slow, seeming like it was his first day of work. Sergio had to help him and was soaked to the bone. When he got back home, his wife wasn't there, and he became even more irritated. Not once during the day did she call him to ask why he was late. He didn't smell dinner, even though it was always made at that time, and his wife wasn't present to receive him like every day. Obviously, she was comforting her stallion. Of course, the horse is more important to her, even if her husband had an accident or something happened to him. Furious, Sergio went to the stable, but on the way, he came to his senses. He was in a bad mood, and he could yell, but his wife was about to have a child, so he couldn't upset her. He took a deep breath, put a smile on his face, and entered the stable. Silence. Only Pegasus snoring could be heard, but the stallion wasn't in the barn. He was lying on the ground. Sergio immediately became worried, feeling that something was wrong. Sergio approached and became speechless. His wife Alice was unconscious with a newborn next to her, and Pegasus was very close to them, as if warming them with his body. Outside, it was very cold and the baby was without anything. Sergio didn't understand what had happened. He came to his senses, called the ambulance, took off his soaked coat, and quickly wrapped the baby in his jacket. Pegasus looked at him, moving his ears. The doctors arrived quickly and took the mother and baby away. Fortunately, both were alive. Although they had spent a lot of time in the stables, there were no serious injuries to the mother or baby. The horse protected them from the cold with his warmth. Alice couldn't exactly say what had happened. She was apparently in shock. She remembered the pain in her belly and then woke up in the hospital room. While Alice was in the hospital, Sergio was thankful for his family. Then he realized that being with the animal really calmed him down. He became less nervous and more encouraged. It seemed like all those trainers and motivators were right, convincing people that you have to talk about something first for it to become a reality. If you don't have money, tell everyone you have it, then you will have it for real. Sergio told his friends how great it was to have a horse, how beautiful it was to have one, and it really was. Now, he didn't complain about Pegasus. He was only grateful to him because he saved 2 important lives for Sergio, his wife and son. They were quickly released to go home with their father, and Sergio was right. He no longer had jealousy towards his wife. He also seriously considered the plan to open an equestrian school. He analyzed, made some edits, and assisted his wife in dedicating herself professionally to horses. In the end, it wasn't as bad as he had imagined. Alice didn't spend the whole day in the stables. The equestria school had qualified staff. Alice took care of the baby at home, and her husband ran the school. And of course, he didn't forget about his little one. He learned many things after that, such as trusting his beloved, programming his own thoughts for a good life, and being calm. Thanks to Pegasus, he convinced himself that communicating with animals can alleviate stress, which helps a lot in modern life. His equestrian school became a kind of health center where sick children and people in need of psychological and physical rehabilitation could go. Sergio's family ended their jealousy recently, probably due to the wonderful qualities of horses. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you will share your thoughts in the comments and support the channel by liking and subscribing. A big hug and see you in the next story.